Wait for that. Yeah. So see, now that we're recording, you don't want to act different, right? You want to just kind of continue to just cruise like we already were. Where are you at there? Are you in one of the lodges or something? You're at McGinnis
I'm here
Meadows,
at the
right?
lodge at McGinnis Meadows, Libby, Montana.
Oh,
And we're here trying to get all their horses lined out, get their staff educated and trained, and we're working at it.
that's
Tomorrow will be
great.
our first
Cool.
day for the year. That's what we're up to. We have about 88 head of horses to do here, and about 65 of them will be the staff will be doing, and I'll just be overseeing. The rest I'll do myself. So I'll do the personal horses of Shane Jackson's, the owners, and Desiree Sides, the managers. The staff will do the string. So
Good deal. Tommy, do you have something to drink, or you got a glass of water? We're going to be here for a second.
Oh yeah, I've got a drink. I'm good.
Oh, good deal. Yeah, I came up here to do the podcast, and I had left a beer in the refrigerator at the house. We've got a little bunkhouse up here where some of the guys live, and of course it's gone, right? So I dug around and I found this thing, and it's called a Sobrio. It's a non-alcoholic margarita with protein in it, and you put water in there and shake it up. So, cheers.
Supposed to be healthy.
It's gross, but it's healthy. Yeah. Well, before we get too far into the podcast, we'll tell everybody who you are. You're Tommy Kilgore, and we're really happy that you came on the podcast with us this evening. I think you're from Oklahoma, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, I'm from.
I don't know a whole lot about you, but we've heard a lot of good things about you from Robbie and Ricky Quinn, especially when they were on the show. And so you're a farrier.
Yes, sir.
Your name's Tommy Kilgore. You're from Oklahoma, and we're going to let you tell us all about yourself as the podcast goes on, if that works for you.
We can do that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm originally from Boyd, Oklahoma, and I graduated from Oklahoma Farriers College in 1987. I got to study under the great Bud Beeston. That's been a real challenge to stand up to his bar, and so we've been after it a long time. Try to do a good quality service and carry on the legacy of Oklahoma Farriers College as well.
Gotcha.
Boy.
So was that something you hit like right out of high school? Like, was this always kind of your trajectory, or?
When I was, about 12 years old, I watched a man named Kenneth Childers shoe a horse, and I was fascinated with it. Kenneth was from my hometown. He was well known in that area for a lot of things, and I started following Kenneth around when I was about 15, and then I went to Oklahoma Farriers College between my sophomore and junior year of high school. And then I went back and spent a little time with Bud, and followed on through with Dr. Redden in Kentucky, and then turned and studied under him. So this was not just a high school deal. This was from a kid. This was something I had a crazy, weird passion for. So just went after it and stayed with it. It's been a long time.
So Tommy, when you were really young, like, how was that passion for shoeing horses manifested? Like, what kind of stuff did you do, and how were you kind of drawn to it from a young age like that?
Just the art of it. There's more to it than just whacking off some foot and nailing shoes on. There's a lot of science to it, a lot of studying the entire horse, knowing the anatomy. And so it was just the trivia of it, how to balance a horse and be a benefit to the horse, not just, we put some shoes on him and made a few bucks today. Let's raise the quality of life of that animal, So that's kind of, was just always exciting to me. And I don't know why, but it was.
So did you have many people around you that were interested in the same thing, or did it take a while to come across some mentors and even just fellow farriers or prospective farriers that wanted to do the same thing with the same passion that you had?
Well, I just got lucky right off the bat and got in with the guys that had that passion, and I built off of them guys. I really don't know how answer that any other way. There's not a lot out there there's a lot of guys that do quite a few different styles that are really good farriers. But when you really go to break that horse down, I study the entire horse from these teeth all the way through, and the horse has always been fascinating to me. So since I was a little bitty kid, and then when I got a chance to be a part of something that could really make a difference, I went after it.
So I guess for a little bit of reference, I know you've talked to Joe some, and I do a similar thing to what Joe does. I ride horses for the public, and I help manage a ranch here, and I'm around horses all the time, and I can tack a shoe on. It's not super pretty, but it won't come off. But I don't know a lot. I know some farriers. I know when the farrier's coming in 2 weeks. I'm not that educated on the whole process, but from the people that I've talked to that have mentioned your name, they talked about it a lot like, I think Joe would agree. Like Joe and I talk about our mentors and horsemanship. Like we probably light up and we probably talk way too much, and you can't shut us down if we get going about it. And so people that I've heard your name from talk the same way. They start saying, well, Tommy Kilgore, he's coming here and we're going to go to a clinic and we're going to learn how to shoe our horses better. And in my mind, I was like, I didn't quite know what they were learning. And I'm still not sure. And I guess that's my biggest question. I'm mostly excited to talk to you is to find out what it is that you are really doing different and really driving home in the farrier world that makes a big difference and really sets you apart. Or if that's even something maybe from the inside, you don't think about it that way, but from the experience I've had, just hearing about you, you're sort of like the horseman that we follow in the horsemanship world, that I could tell you why I think they're different than everyone else. And I'm just curious what it is that you do that makes you different from all the other farriers, or maybe other schools of thought, you and the farriers that work like you do.
Well, the thing is mine is very simple. I keep it to the pure basic fundamentals. Center of the leg, level as possible, line up the pastern with the shoulder, line up all the columns as much as possible. I don't get into, I don't try to use a shoe to fix my problems. I use fundamentals and what foot we have there. I'm not saying that I don't ever have to have an aid of some form of corrective shoe, but I really stress hard on the fundamentals, and I don't vary. And it's been successful for me. I've been shoeing since 1987 professionally, raised a family doing it, paid for a ranch, staying with those fundamentals, not varying off with, oh, there's a new shoe out on the market, let's go try that. Because it doesn't matter what the shoe is, if those fundamentals aren't correct, it doesn't matter, because all you're doing is an aid for the moment. You're not fixing the problem. And I use natural markers of the foot to tell me where to trim. And 99.9% of the time, if I use those markers and read those markers correctly, we can x-ray and they all line up. And I've proved it to these young men and women and many professional trainers that I've shod for over the years that it works. The process that, we all have to have maintenance injections and things of that sort in performance horses. But if I can minimize those injections a year by proper foot balance and balancing the anatomy of the horse, then I've won, accomplished my goal. So that's what we do is we don't, if we walk in and look at a horse and he's got two different looking front feet, I don't get too concerned with that. I look at his shoulder blades, his withers, his knee radiuses, the V in his breast, and I level those things. And when I leave, if we still have two uneven feet, I adjust those lengths off of the center of rotation. So if I had an upright foot and a little lower foot, I don't fret that as long as I have the rest of the horse level and balanced. If you guys ride for 11, put saddle pad under one side of your saddle, and cut it off, and not put pad on the other side, and see how well you ride that day. You're going to lean because your saddle's going to lean. So if that horse's shoulder's not up, if he's not up at his withers, leveled up, how do you expect him to pick up his leads correctly? How do you expect him to hold a lead or to hold his straightness to turn around? Well, if I can adjust the feet a little bit and help those things, then it's a win for all of us. Mainly the horse, because he's more comfortable. That's kind of the strategy I go with.
I mean, that sounds like a very similar philosophy to the horsemanship that we practice. And you're at McGinnis there. I know that's what they're all probably working on, is not blaming any particular thing in that the horse is doing or your tools or something, but it's the Indian, not the arrow. It's us most of the time. But in that case, though, when you're trimming a foot, let's just say trimming a foot, not only are you taking off excess hoof that's grown in, but if you feel like you're correcting a hoof, what's causing that? What's the culprit? Is that just a natural law of thermodynamics where a horse's foot is always kind of in a natural digression? Or is it something the horse does or something the people do? Because with horsemanship, a lot of times we say we're just trying to fit the horse like they would move in the pasture, right? We're trying to do something with them and then have them move in such a way that they can already do on their own. But if you're trimming, and especially doing corrective trimming, but not really corrective, you're just trimming it back to how the horse's, like you're saying, trimming it according to how the horse's lines are telling you it should be trimmed. What causes that? And would a horse in the wild have the same problem as a horse that someone has in their pasture they ride 5 times a week?
No. I've got to be on some research teams and study the data from other research teams. We have wild horses born with deformities as well. I mean, that just happens in humans, horses, dogs, cats, everything. But the horses that doesn't have a major deformity, their heels are worn even, their breakovers worn even, their widest parts are even, side to side, because they travel, and they travel straight. We keep them locked up in stalls, paddocks, and as humans, as for the most part, we're not aware of straightness. Our horses will ride crooked, with and it'll show in their feet the imbalance of them being rode, and that's the biggest deal. We are the culprit of most of the foot problems as a human, not just farriers. It's owners, rider trainers, facilities, terrain, everything. Those wild horses, they don't have the problems we have with domestic horses. That's why we have such a problem with wild horse population. Mother Nature takes care of them.
So I've got a question going off that, Tommy. And again, I'm kind of like Ben. I'm not very educated on farrier philosophies, and I definitely would like to know more. But this whole idea you're talking about of balance and keeping everything in line, I know now from the little we've talked, it sounds like you're going around doing clinics and helping to educate people. So would you say this philosophy, do you feel like you're in the mainstream, outside of the mainstream, maybe one of the, how would you in layman's terms describe kind of your line of thinking? Like, is this something most farriers think about and maybe you're putting a bigger emphasis on it? Or is it something that you feel like not near enough farriers are paying attention to? Kind of what's the lay of the land as far as the industry and your line of thinking?
Well, what I do is nothing but pure basic fundamentals. But I had a master that taught me to see the horse as well, not just the foot. And a lot of our farriers institutions, not all, because we still have some very good schools and good instructors out there. But the majority of them, you'll say something about the horse being out of balance, and that's like speaking a foreign language to them. All they worry about is making 2 front feet look identical, 2 back feet looking identical. Okay, that's not taking care of the horse. That's taking care of, you made a customer happy because you made 4 pretty feet that look alike. But my deal is just really going back generations, because my masters were way back farriers. Horses, plumb back to Bud Beeston when he was a kid, the horse was still a big form of transportation. It wasn't just a hobby or a show horse. And Bud's masters, that was people's form of transportation and livelihood, how to farm with and everything else. They had to keep them horses sound. So I hung on to that. I really valued that from what I got to learn from Bud. And it's a lost deal. You know, I don't know how it got so relaxed and everyone just kind of faded away. But I have friends that are farriers that they do some really, really extreme lameness stuff. But when you go into and evaluate what they've done, those basic fundamentals are there first. It doesn't matter what the shoe looks like they put on; those fundamentals are there. And Rick Red, I mean, he's one of the greatest farriers of all time, and surgeons. Everything he does, those basic fundamentals are there. He might have a shoe that's 3 inches thick at the heel and a 1/4 inch at the toe with that big of a lift, or right in the middle of the foot, the lift's there. But the trim is pure basic fundamentals. He just needed the aid to help him line everything else back up. Gotcha. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it does. And that to me is really interesting. I mean, I feel like a lot of industries, at least some of the ones I'm around, are really that almost seems to happen, right? So like, for example, you were talking about the fundamentals getting lost, and there's definitely, you know, a lot of that in the horsemanship world. You know, you see things where it's like everybody's, you know, you talk about a tack store full of ways to fix the horse's problems or something like that. And it's kind of gotten away from, you know, maybe like in our case, maybe someone's great grandfather's way of handling a horse, you know, because like you said, they kind of lived a little closer to the land. Or, you know, you see it a lot in ranching. There's kind of been this whole movement kind of back to more rotational grazing, more kind of like what they call regenerative agriculture, making less hay, things like that. So there's a lot of industries, especially maybe in like the ag/horse world, where it's like, it seemed like there were all these advancements and then maybe the baby got thrown out with the bathwater, and it's almost like a renaissance is happening. And that kind of seems like what you've described to me is it's almost like going and reteaching, quote unquote, rediscovering these kind of classical ideas about how to think about how horses need to be trimmed.
Yeah, it is. I'll give you an example. I have a friend that's from Georgia. His father was a farrier, and he learned a little bit, and he would always send me pictures of his horses after he was done. And boy, he would build shoes. He would finish them from the hairline down. All the clinches were great. Everything really was just really pretty. And I'd try to explain to him, this needs to be done. This needs, you're still off. Oh, no. It was all about pretty. So one day I was in kind of a foul mood, and he sent me some pictures, and I said, it's bad that you screwed up a beautiful finish job with a shitty shoeing job. He never sent me any pictures anymore, but he started asking questions because he didn't realize what he had done. He was all worried about the pretty or making that beautiful handmade shoe, but he wasn't worried about the horse. It was all about what he could make it look like. And that's what's happened to a lot of our industry. I have nothing against handmade shoes, but when you put more emphasis on the pretty shoe you made than the trim you did, it's kind of counterproductive.
Well, let me ask you this, Tommy. This is a thought I just had. And Ben and I, at least I know I see it, and I imagine Ben does too. There's a big shift now from maybe 60 years ago. There's a lot of people that's what maybe that's not necessarily what they want, but that's what they're thinking about is the pretty horse, because they're not going to use that animal enough to really have those imbalances come out and cause lameness. Or if they do, it's not a big deal because it's like not what they have to use to drive to work every day.
Sure.
Sure.
And that's happened. They're not aware enough and connected enough to even realize, if they can't visually see it, it doesn't exist. They don't have enough feel when they're riding their horse to feel that their horse is off or their horse is struggling. And a lot of it could just be their foot balance. It could be other things. It could be the saddle not fitting. Could be the bridle they're using, their teeth. But if they can't visually see it, they don't recognize it. And because as long as it looks pretty.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's the same kind of here. I know there's a lot of people who, I try to take very good care of all the horses I have that come in, but I know there are some people that they don't care if the horse is, maybe not trying to bite them anymore or something like that, or the horse is working better. Like if his mane isn't completely brushed out and he's not looking beautiful, right? It's like, yeah, you know why he looks like worn out and kind of grungy? It's because he's been sweating all day because we've been putting in work to help him be better. Which again, I try to still be good about that, but there are definitely people with that mindset that the horse is, it's almost like their horse is like a collectible car or something, as opposed to something they use every day. So it probably feels really good to pay, however much money to have 4 handmade shoes with really nice clips go on that. It's like getting a new set of rims or something. You're like, man, that looks good. That's going to look really good next month when I go to ride him once. Yeah.
That's what's happened to a lot of it. They fell off into that. Look pretty. That it's pretty, so it must be right. Well, it's not necessarily. But, some guys can get away with it for a long time. Mm-hmm. But I get to make a lot of money off of those guys because that prettiness will catch up eventually. Because it doesn't take but one mistake, getting a little bit out of balance today. 6 weeks, it might not make you pay the price as much. But 12 weeks, that problem's grown even larger. 18 is even farther. Well, I shoe and have shot top-end performance cutters for 25 plus years. When them guys go to Fort Worth to futurity, they're going for $250,000. I don't have that allowance. I have to do my job, just like they had to do theirs. Because I can't risk one of my customers costing them that kind of money. And I don't want to damage the horse. I want the horse to be able to go do the best he can do. So I can't be the weak link in the deal. So maybe that. I've put that pressure on myself to stay loyal to the fundamentals because I know they work. I know they save, my owners a lot of money, save my horses from being, a lot of unnecessary stress, soreness. So that's why, I kind of stay with what I know works.
Mm-hmm. Now, I got one more question to kind of piggyback off what you said. Then the folks that are shoeing for high-end performance horses, whether it's cutting or some other kind of high stakes event where the horse really has a lot of physical demands on it. Mm-hmm. I imagine, do the shoers that are working for those folks, do they deviate from these principles as much as maybe the guy down the street who's just kind of doing all the backyard horses? Because I would think that with the high physical demands placed on those horses, those mistakes would come to the forefront a lot quicker, kind of like you said.
In the last 15 years, it hasn't mattered. That's how much the quality of the farriers in the U.S. has went down. There's such a volume of horses. They don't really ever have to, it doesn't take that much time to be able to go hang your shingle out and say, hey, I'm a farrier, and you're loaded up with work, because there's the volume of horses out there today across the U.S. is just unreal. So that's another part of the problem with our young farriers. They really don't have to pay their dues anymore. So just whatever's working for them or comfortable for them at the time, there's still lots of work. They lose a customer today. Oh, well, someone else will call. Well, they lose another one. Oh, well, someone else will call, because there's such a volume. My apprentices that stay with me at home and travel with me, they say, you turn down more work than we do. Well, I can only do so much. But that's because there's such a volume of horses. Anyone that gives the people what they think they want, the look or whatever, or makes them, come in and make a set of handmade shoes and make it look pretty, those backyarders are happy. The performance horse people aren't happy. They have a rotation, but it's going down even in the performance horse world. The quality is slowly fading away. And that's why I think of all the young men and women that I have come in contact with. They're seeing what I've done with my career. I mean, I have customers I've worked for, same customers, for 25 years. I have horses that's 25 to 30 that's never had anyone else touch their feet in their life. And they're like, why do those people stay with you? Why do they stay with you? Well, because I minimize their cost. I make their horse more efficient. I keep him comfortable, keep his feet right. So it's just like your car. You go put on tires on it that's not balanced. You can take a brand new truck. In a matter of a few months, you're going to be putting front end parts on it. You're going to be putting new shocks on it. Even though it's brand new, it's breaking it down. And then that's what happens, But those boys are like, yeah, but you still got high-end customers calling you, show horse people. Well, it's because they know I'm going to do my job, the best I can.
Mm.
So do you think that's a result of more horses or less farriers, or what's caused that shift?
A combination of both. There's a lot out there the horseshoeing schools still have a lot of attendance. I don't know how many graduates they have, but they have a lot of attendance. So I really can't answer it on the human side of it, but horse-wise, we do have a lot more horses today. As you'd say, the backyard horse or the amateur sport horse, things of that sort, trail riders and stuff like that. So there's a huge volume of horses, and it just makes it easy for them. When I started back, the horse market was pretty slim. You couldn't hardly give a horse away, so not everybody wanted a horse in their backyard. So I had to fight for every horse I got to do when I was a kid. And man, I did them. They didn't make a difference if they had a donkey or whatever it was. They had 4 feet. We did them. So a lot of them was laying on their side, tied down to do them, but I valued every one of them.
Yeah.
And I was out there scratching and fighting for it because there wasn't a huge volume of horses. And in my area, there was a lot of farriers. So these kids don't have to do that today, so they just making fast money and rolling on.
So I'm down here just south of Atlanta. So I get down around Ocala occasionally and Wellington and that area and Florida. And, it's swamped with money and horses. And you see a lot of farriers down around there. But what's interesting is in this part of the country, whenever you hear someone talk about a farrier, a lot of times they're talking kind of negatively about them. And the biggest thing horse people talk to each other about is, hey, can you give me your farrier's number? Because I don't like my farrier. And there's a lot of that going on. Yeah. But a moment ago, you were talking about getting your tires balanced. I mean, we seem to have that pretty figured out in our country, right? You can go to the gas, you can go to a Jiffy Lube, or actually they got busted. Remember that like 20 years ago for doing bad stuff to your car. But anyway, I think they're better now. For the most part, if you have a shop and you balance tires, you can take your tires in there. They're going to balance them. They're going to go in your truck and it's going to work out. With farriers, I guess the way I see it, and it could be a number of problems, but I know as farriers, you guys have a couple of associations, or at least, certain titles you can have, right? Like you can be a certified journeyman farrier.
Mhm.
Now, is there a problem where there's a lot of guys just hanging out their shingle and they don't have a title? Maybe they didn't go to school, or they attended and then flunked out and started a business? Or is it just that the title, certified journeyman farrier, doesn't mean what it should mean because the schooling isn't there for the farriers?
That's a good question. Is because it doesn't mean what it should. You know, they have a test through the AFA, the American Farriers Association, and they have to pass the test. But there's no one held responsible. No one holds them responsible, or for the quality of work they do. And then we have the Brotherhood, which it's an old association. It's not as strong, but I tested 20 some years ago in Bud Beeston. He was more of through the Brotherhood, so that's the way I went. It was through the Brotherhood. And you don't have to be certified to be a good farrier. You just have to have pride. Want to do quality. Make the horse first. I think that's been a real key to my deal, because I just always loved the horse and had a great passion for the horse. I wanted to know. I couldn't pull in enough knowledge. I was always hungry for it, whether it was his feet, riding him, doing his teeth, whatever. And I just don't think we have that in our society today as a whole. We don't have that burning passion to be very good. Just, hey, we just do enough to get by, be decent, make a living. I work for a lot of companies, or CEOs of companies and stuff. And I hear the same thing from those guys. They have very few who want to step up and be a manager or be the lead guy. They're just content with having a job. And I think that's not just in farriers. It's all over the whole workforce, all over the world. And
because the path to becoming a farrier in Europe is pretty rigorous, isn't it? The path to becoming a farrier in Europe is pretty rigorous, isn't it? And I've heard a few farriers speak about some of the things you got to go through. And as an American, you hear all that and you think, gosh, that's a little too much control. And that, you just kind of anti-control and anti-regulation. But have you given some thought to what could help our system here, or if we need to take on some of the methodologies that they're implementing in Europe?
We need to take those on. We need more masters out there. Like I'm doing internships and apprenticeships. The ones that are really, I keep the bar pretty high for them. And if they're not willing to play that at that level, I don't need them. And I'll turn them loose. And I've had some that I've had to turn loose that I really thought a lot of. But we need an internship, just like over there in Europe. It used to be, I don't know the stats on it now, but it used to be they had to do an apprenticeship in almost 5 years. And then they would get released to go out into the country and be a farrier. But they didn't just get to go to a 2-week course and go hang their shingle out and go to shoeing horses. So, yes, yeah. I'm not against it. I think we need longer term internships, or they can't practice in, an everyday deal.
Yeah. Joe and I have talked about the same thing, and it's a weird place to be coming from to talk about it, because we're just young guys getting started in the horse training business. But in the horse training business, you have it's probably much less regulated than it is for you guys as farriers. Even, we would never let some random person show up at the public school and say, I'm a 3rd grade teacher. I'm pretty good. You guys should hire me. In fact, I've got a book and I'm on YouTube, and I got nice clothes, and I look like a teacher and I talk like a teacher. So I am a teacher, without having the proper documentation and paperwork and a resume to back it up. Right. So with horse training, I don't know, it gets kind of weird. You're like, well, that means me. That means I need to be regulated, and someone's got to tell me I'm actually good at what I do. And I don't know how you go around all that, but we've definitely talked about it before. Like, it is interesting. You look at other industries where you're teaching somebody's child, or in this case, you're teaching somebody's horse, or in your case, you're working on their horse's feet. No different than a surgeon's replacing a hip. It might not seem like you're digging around in the hip, but you're still cutting on the foot. And the way you talk about it seems awfully important to the whole, biomechanical structure of the horse. It seems like there ought to be some kind of, maybe not government regulated, but industry. Like, if the industry should take care of that itself before it does need to be regulated by a government source.
And the AFA, that's why they've set in some of the, standards they have to try to do some form of regulating, but it all came about dollars and volume, so quality out the door it went, I'm not saying there's not good quality AFA shoers out there, but it's the test. You have to study, you have to practice, but it's passable. It doesn't take a genius to pass the test. So these guys, they get the foot flat, line it up, and pass the test. The written test is pretty tough. You have to study and you have to know some anatomy. But there's no one after they get that certification holds them to a standard. So it doesn't matter how much regulation we have, or if we don't have a monitor that says, hey, you're not doing quality work, you're going to have to go back down to apprentice level. It's never going to change.
Yeah. So what you're suggesting there would kind of be like maybe like every 2 years you got to go in for like a practical test or something.
I think you should have to, somewhere, some way be held accountable.
Yeah.
But the thing is the only accountability now, okay, you work your way up to where you can do the performance horses or the show horses. Okay, if you don't do your job, eventually you just get fired and they quit using you. So you go back down to, amateur rodeo horses, backyard horses, stuff like that. Now you work away. You maybe get tired of doing that. You'll step your game up a little bit and get back into the performance world, or maybe not. Just stay where you're at and make a living and go on, because there's so many of those horses out there. You can work every day and not have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But I like the challenge to try to help those top end horses stay together.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you're very aware of this, but what I hear you describe to me, it's almost like an impossible problem, right? So if you just took the farrier industry out of it, and I just described to you, maybe like a electrician or something,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like, look, these guys, you can spend X amount of time developing your skills, and then you go out into the world, and then really the only standard in place to police you is kind of the normal supply and demand of capitalism. Whereas as your service gets better, you're going to be able to have more value and charge more.
Sure.
But because of how the market has shifted, you don't really need to have very high quality to make good money. And at least, here in Virginia, especially you get towards the coast or like Maryland, I know some guys my age in Maryland that are making crazy money being farriers there. And I don't know if they're good farriers or bad farriers. I'm not saying that. But if you can make that kind of money and, like you said, just kind of be mediocre, these guys, they have no outside force motivating them to be any better. It all has to come from within. And the reality of it is unfortunately, not everyone's like you, Tommy. Like, the reason you are where you are is because you're internally motivated to get better. But it's not everyone has that, and you can't tell that person like, oh, well, you got to do better, you got to, work harder, da da da. It's like, why would I work harder when I can make this good living and not have any really financial or professional consequences
Sure.
from not working any harder?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oklahoma's cost of living rate is about as low as it could be anywhere in the state. So our Farriers rates are not as high as they are on the West Coast or the East Coast in certain areas. I mean, we still get pretty good rates, but we're a little lower below the average. But a young man or a young woman go out, learn the process, work half a day, Monday through Friday, and make six-figure income.
Wow.
They don't have to look at it.
Yeah. Sounds like we need to go to Farrier school, Ben.
Yeah, all
Get
right.
yourself out of bed in the morning and go to work and be done, by noon every day, Monday through Friday, and make six-figure income.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like Joe, what you were just talking about, what you described with those farriers, that's like what happens in the horse training business too, and that's why I brought it up. And again, like, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't pass the test either, but you would think that some top horse intellectuals, let's say around the world, could come together, and I bet if you had 10 of them, Tommy, you were talking about the fundamentals. I'm sure they would bitch and squabble about a lot of stuff, but if you could get them to calm down and just talk about the fundamentals, I bet they would all agree on some of the fundamentals. And then you put that on a test. And then if you want to be a horse trainer, you got to take that test, because a lot of these horse trainers, it's not that they would have a problem giving you a big gab about what it is they do. It's just, it would look different. Each guy, it would look different. And most of them, it really wouldn't make a lot of sense when you compared it to how a horse thinks and operates. It'd be something they made up that looks cool, that some poor lady with a lot of money is paying them way too much money to train their horse. And again, they have no incentive to get any better because it works great. And it kind of gives them an edge there. It's the Joey Sanders method, or I just made that one up, but it's my method and my website and my clinics. And instead of like, hey, I'm part of the brotherhood, I took the test, I know what I'm doing. Let's keep the rates good. Let's keep the service good, and let's be good horsemen. And we might all pursue a little different path, but we're all at least like somewhat starting from the same, from the base jump. I don't know. I know horse training is more intellectual and it gets kind of squirrely, but I mean, all the fundamentals are kind of the same, and any great horseman in the world kind of knows that and says that.
Well, when you look at the top end guys and girls in the training world, if you wouldn't watch their programs, they have solid fundamentals. And they carry that all the way through that horse right into the show pen. And they win. Their horses are balanced. They turn around correct. They stop straight. But they teach them with good fundamentals. They do not skip those fundamentals to go get him to do a reining pattern, because he can't do a reining pattern correctly without those fundamentals. And where some of the other younger trainers, I can get a little faster. I can get this. Well, I've worked for a trainer pushing on 24 years. And his son could really get a 2-year-old doing some amazing stuff. And a young 3-year-old. He wasn't there to finish the horses. His dad would finish the horses. But the son would start all the colts. And one day his dad fired him. So, what'd you fire Derek for? And he said he got so good at what he was doing, he could skip spots and still make those colts look good, but they would tell on me when the heat got on in the show pen. Those spots he skipped would show back up. That's just the same way with the shoeing. That's what's happened to our farriers, our trainers. Let's make them look shiny and fast today. Impress our customer, make them really proud. Well,
yeah,
that pays the bills for a while. But, when you're a farrier and you're just barely getting close or getting to that 6-figure income, and you're just doing whatever, makes people happy today, But you're looking over at the rest and saying, damn, they're making 3 times what I'm making. Those that are making 3 times that are paying their dues and keeping all the steps involved, not skipping steps to get a fancy result today.
Yeah.
So how did you get into teaching Farrier Clinics, and when did you get into that?
Well, I didn't start teaching until about 5 years ago. I just didn't have the mindset for it. I was too hardcore, too hard to get along with. And I was at a clinic with Ricky Quinn, riding with Ricky Quinn. I had some colts, and I met Ricky, and I went up to ride these colts and just hang out. And I seen some stuff happen, and Ricky wanted, ask a question, and I answered the question. And Ricky came to me when I was fixing to leave out to head to lunch, and he said, "Man, can you explain to me what your answer there?" He said. So I started telling him what I'd seen and how I'd seen it. And we just got to visiting back and forth. He called and got my number after the clinic was over, and we just communicated. And he said, "Hey, could I get you to come out and work with my guys at the Lazy U? Try to help them. We're having really a lot of problems with shoeing." And so I agreed. We went out and helped them a few times. And then Ricky said, "Hey, how about would you go help these guys?" So Ricky's really the cause of me teaching clinics and stuff. Because I stayed with myself. I just went and did my job. I'd go back east and study with Dr. Redden, and I've got a friend named Jim Stewart that's an advanced farrier, and we graduated Oklahoma Farriers College together and stayed really close. So we just challenged each other back and forth all the time and study. But that's the way it stayed. And then Ricky got going out there, and he said, "Man, there's a need for you for what you're doing because you can make a difference." And so we just kind of got going that way. They're all open to the public. We have clinics for auditors. We've had them in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We have them over there at Chesapeake. I do some stuff, and I just left Seattle last night. I came on over here to Kalispell. I did a clinic in Banks, Oregon, and it's just
Cool.
we're starting to monitor and screen them out pretty good before we just say, "Oh yeah, come on along," because I don't want to waste anyone's money, and I don't want my time wasted, with someone that's not real or not serious, because I could have another young man or young lady in that spot that is really wanting it or needing to get a career and get started and is hungry for it. So I'd rather have them as just a warm body in the spot. And I get a lot of criticism for having that attitude, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah. You already said how many unmotivated people there are in the industry. Last thing you need to do is add more to it.
Yeah.
We don't need any more. That's just I've always had a passion for this, and I don't like anyone taking it lightly. I want them to be motivated and really have a true passion for it. And they don't know that from the start. But, I've had some of the students that they thought they really wanted, and they worked hard. They worked hard all the way through, their month or 3 month deal. They stayed with me. And I like out at different places that I've picked these kids up and worked with them. And then they did it and say, I don't know that this is really what I want to do. But they were honest with me. And they went on their way. But they learned a lot. They learned a lot about the horse. They learned how to take a little better care of their horse and things to watch for. And so they did take a lot away from it, but they're just not going to be farriers today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool. This all worked out because after all the things we've been talking about, you've obviously been seeing problems in the industry and working at this for quite a while. You hadn't ever thought of doing clinics before Ricky mentioned that to you? Or had you been involved in any farrier schools or anything like that?
I went back up and worked after I graduated from Bud Beeston's. I'd go up and fill in a few days here and there as an instructor. But it wasn't really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be solid. Before, and that was another thing. I wanted to really feel that the material I was sharing was solid. It was proven. It works. It worked 40 years ago. It worked 60 years ago. It works today. It's still The horse is still a horse, and it's still the same fundamentals. And once I was established, accomplished different goals throughout my career and things, and I was a little more comfortable with it. But no, I wasn't much for it. And with visits with Ricky, and he kind of will prod you along a little bit, and he's like, "Man, you've worked your whole life to accumulate this knowledge of the horse, not just shoeing, and you're going to keep it and take it with you." And that kind of rung a bell. That's not fair. My masters ahead of me shared their knowledge, so I could have the career I have. It's not fair for me to take what I have accumulated with me when I'm gone.
Yeah.
So
how much do you worry about your students needing to suffer a little bit, or practice and fail some before you just give them the answer? And how do you implement that when you're working on a horse's hoof, and you probably don't want them to really do anything detrimental?
Oh no, I will not. When
fail.
I'm there with them, I mean, I'm staying pretty close to tight with them and watching every move they make. I won't let them. I'll stop them, explain to them what path they're on there with their nippers or whatever, what it's fixing to cause. No, I will not. I'm not going to let them learn the way I had to learn lots of times.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine that's a little bit like a guy in medical school, right? You can't just let him practice doing surgeries. Do you guys do anything with cadaver legs, or, stuff that people can kind of mess up and butcher?
Sure. Yeah. We'll take cadaver legs and we'll trim the hoof, and then we'll dissect the leg and break it all the way down. But we will do a trim on it first. And we'll trim half of the foot, leave the other half untrimmed, or we'll trim half one way and trim the other half another way. We'll set it up on the table to kind of see the different markers and the alignments the best we can without the rest of the horse attached to it. So yes, we use some cadavers, and at all of the clinics, we'll do cadaver legs, because my students will seem to be getting things pretty good, going along pretty good, and we'll dissect the leg, and it just like kicks them in gear. And then they really understand how it all connects together on the inside, so that it's a big plus for them to see how that leg works, because they get to take full ligaments, full tendons, where it all attaches, and everything like that. So they get a little better understanding of what's there and what we're dealing with then. So,
Yeah, imagine that really helps it hit home. Because, like I said, I don't really know that much, but I do have a great appreciation for the horse's hoof. And over the last year and a half or so, I have been looking at some things, and I've seen some of those diagrams. Or our farrier here, he's always sharing stuff on his Facebook page, and it's pretty fascinating. And it makes you appreciate the horse's hoof, because we worry about all this stuff, but I forget that the hoof is carrying that whole horse. And then the horses that are super athletic and can jump, or you rope a bull and they're holding all that weight, and the function that hoof has, it's incredible. It's fascinating to look at those diagrams of how a horse's hoof is put together. It adds a whole new layer of like appreciation, I guess, for nature and just the way the horse is put together.
yeah. Well, you think about this. You got 4 quarters on a horse. You got 4 feet. How much weight is each one of those little bitty feet, with maybe say 8 square inches, is carrying? If that foot's not right, how much more of the body is it affecting? If you break that down, how many square inches do you say a foot would be? It's 4 inches long across the bottom and 3 inches wide. You figure that up, and he's carrying 300 or 400 pounds on each one of those. It's a lot of weight for a little bitty structure. If you get it 3 or 4 degrees off, or you get the toe length too far ahead of the center of rotation, how much leverage really compounded right up through the skeletal structure of that horse, tendons and ligaments and joints, and it ain't very long you get to hurting. Your mind goes to fading from the task to, oh geez, my knees are hurting, my ankles are hurting, my feet are hurting. It's like you guys riding and training horses. You get on a saddle that doesn't fit you very well. And very long, it's hard to stay. You're hard to stay focused on the task because you're worried about your butt hurting, or rather, somewhere the horse has got to be the same way,
Yeah, exactly. I saw a photo the other day, and I want to ask you about this. It was a photo, like a before and after of a trim.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if it was just like a hokey marketing deal or if this is really legit. But on the side profile in the first picture, the horse's withers were probably at least 2.5 inches lower than his butt. Mm-hmm. And then on the after being trimmed or shod, I forget exactly. I don't know if they put shoes on him or not. But those withers were, even, and they had a line showing, and they had a few other lines that showed angles of the horse and his legs and his back and stuff. Can you have that drastic of a change from just trimming a horse?
Most of the time with just a trim, you'll have to use some kind of corrective shoe or a thicker shoe, wedges, things of that. But yes, you can lift that front end up that much. But if you don't do it in the right fashion, or give him some breakover relief when you jack him up that high, you'll cause another damage. You'll cause heel damage, some structural damage in the hoof. Yes, you can elevate a horse, maybe not 2 inches, but you can get or I guess if you put enough wedges or pads on, like the saddlebreds and walking horses, yeah, you could raise it as high as you want to raise it. But if you don't have that foot trim to balance, heels to the widest part, and his balance from toe to heel off the center of rotation even, or to the back, the proper balance. Let's do that. The proper balance, 2/3 to 1/3. You'll crush heel and things like that. But no, we can take a horse. I can take a horse, bring him in, and on a regular maintenance program that's got a little bit out, a little bit long on the toe, or a little underrun heel, and we can trim this horse up. And you can take a picture of it beforehand, and we'll trim the horse and take a picture afterwards, and they don't look like the same horse. I'm not saying I made his withers higher or lower. I didn't try to jack him up in the front end, but when we balanced his foot underneath the limb, where the load is going through the limb into the hoof in the proper fashion, he'll just like a super athlete. He'll just be up.
Yeah,
look like an athlete. He won't look like an old broke down work mule.
So part of it is he just might even feel better to the point where he's engaging those the sling muscles in his chest, and just like he's just sitting better. He probably feels better and feels like you said, like an athlete. Like you get on a new pair of running shoes and you feel like you could run a marathon. You're like, this is sweet. You go put on a pair of what are those? I hate those shoes. The Birkenstocks. You're not going to feel like you can run a marathon in Birkenstocks. You're just going to stand funny even. So.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't know if that photo was just somebody trying to market their program or something, or it was a big difference. And I was like, I'm going to ask Tommy about that, because
you can do it.
I haven't paid enough attention to that stuff.
But to get that kind of change, you have to use man-made materials to get it. To get up 1/2 inch or something, it could just be with the trim. But you get over much more than that, you'll have to use some kind of a thicker shoe, stack pads, things of that sort, to be able to get that kind of lift. I was at Robbie's last week, and he had a horse there, and when Robbie helped this horse in form, the horse looked really crisp and fresh and good flow and things like that. But when Robbie went ahead and relaxed down and let him go down, this horse labored extremely bad. And I told Robbie, I said, when you get through riding and we take the saddle off, I'm going to show you why that happened. And Robbie's like, okay. We went in, we pointed out, and he's like, well, I guess I learned something today, So Robbie's still growing and learning from what the feet and anatomy and things like that. And Robbie, that was one of Robbie's questions. How do we fix this? Well, he was born that way to start with, so we're not going to permanently fix it. But we can use, and Ricky's shoeing for Robbie now, so Ricky was there as well. Kind of give them some ideas of what they can do to try to help this horse, because Robbie's not going to be able to really show this horse, because when he turns him loose to go to his job, he's going to fall down the front end. He's going to get really lumbery and like he's really laboring to go. So that conversation was with Robbie about helping his clients find horses. How important it is to really understand the anatomy of a horse. Whether you're a horseshoer or a trainer, we don't have a perfect horse in the world. There's never made one, just like there's never made a perfect human. But when we're going out and spending the kind of money horses cost today, we need to try to find as perfect as possible. Especially if we're going to be taking our clients' money every month as a trainer, and we're trying to build our reputation off of this client's horse, why create us a harder job? Let's get as balanced as we possibly can. You know, you start with one that's naturally runs downhill bad. He's going to be trouble all the way through. It's going to be more expensive to get him trained because it's going to take longer. You're going to have more vet bills if you even get him trained, because it's hard for him. So he has to struggle every day of it. If he's just not really, really, really strong-willed and willing, he's going to give up. And you guys as trainers, you felt those colts. It'll just get where they would rather resist you is work for you. And sometimes it's not because they're just hard-headed and don't want to get along. It's just they're not built to be what you're asking them to do. And then you take other horses that are built, you know, their anatomy's horrible and they're a superstar. But there are freaks in the world, you know, that can just work through anything. But for the most part, you've got a ill-balanced horse from the beginning. You're going to have an ill-balanced horse in the end. So, I don't, you know, your horsemanship can help a lot of it, but he's still out of balance, you know. Mother Nature made him that way. Don't know why, but it was.
So over the course of your career, do you think you see more malformed feet now or earlier in your career, or has it kind of stayed the same the whole time?
Now.
Yeah.
There's a pretty good pattern, you know, a lot of underrun, heels, long-toed. They've got it, and they, you know, they want us to try to accomplish or achieve 15 millimeters of sole in a horse's foot. And so they try to let these horses carry a longer foot, a bigger foot to achieve that. And really all along is you're causing more inflammation from imbalance. And when the imbalance comes in, the inflammation comes in. When inflammation comes around, the hoof will exfoliate sole out because it's trying to release that heat out through the bottom of the foot. So it's just kind of a pattern that's happened, and it's just steadily got worse as times went by because we're trying to achieve one goal, but we're creating other problems with that. You know, you trim for balance, heels to the widest part or as close as possible each time. Get your toe-heel ratios balanced up. You'll achieve sole. I've got pictures on my phone to prove that it'll work because I have horses with double-aught shoes that'll have 18 to 20 millimeters of sole and they've got a 3-inch toe. I've got a vet sent me one last week that's got 25.4 millimeters of sole and the horse wears an aught shoe. And he's only carrying a little less than about 3 5/8 toe. But they achieved that because of that balance, keeping that toe and heel ratio even, or where it's supposed to be. And they'll start thickening up. But if you let that toe run forward, that sole gets thinner. It's like a rubber band. The more you stretch it, the thinner it gets. The foot's the same way. And when they drop into the backside of that heel, they actually are not on the heel, they're on the back of the heel. And that just allows, the toe is seeking pressure at all times. It'll grow, an imbalanced foot grows to seek pressure because it's unlevel, from side to side, front to back. And that's what happens. The toe runs away, and then the sole gets thin.
That makes sense.
So if someone wanted to educate themselves on all this, not necessarily the farrier side of it, but earlier you were talking about conformation and seeing a horse be in balance and understanding that. What kind of resources are there out there for people who maybe are in the market for a horse and they want to make sure they don't mess up their next buy?
Well, there's lots of anatomy charts all over, and most of your anatomy charts are really accurate. But for some people, some reason, us as a whole in the society today, we don't look at them. We look at a picture on the wall when we walk off, and then we go look at the horse. Oh, look how pretty. He's such a pretty Palomino. He's such a pretty buckskin. Oh, he's a pretty paint. But his withers are 2 inches lower than his hip. His neck ties in up on top of his wither. You know, his croup's flat as the dinner table. You know, they have to want to study the horse. They have to want to know what a balanced horse looks like. It is just how a horse travels. You know, you get a horse that when he steps 2 inches in the hind end with his hind foot, how much drive do you guys think he's going to have? Your horse trainers, he ain't gonna have no drive. He ain't gonna stop either.
Not gonna be great. No.
Because he's always dragging it behind him. You know, I bought a colt a couple of years ago. I'd looked for about a year and a half. Couldn't find what I wanted. I was too picky. My friends would tell me, "You're too picky. You're too picky." Guys, I'm gonna get what I want or I ain't buying. Finally, one of my friends located this colt, and they sent some pictures of him. The first picture, when I opened it on my phone, I said, "He's the one." They said, "Oh, you seen the picture?" I said, "He's the one." Well, they still ask today, why was he the one? Well, as a baby walking, his drive with his hind leg would step plumb up under his cinch. He had the drive. This colt's a natural stopper. I mean, he's just, you think stop, he's already buried up and down. He can turn around. He can drive up out of the ground. That one picture, I seen that natural flow. That's all I needed. I was buying him to raise him to be a cutter, performance cutter, and we're well on our way. So he's with a really good trainer now, and we're futurity bound. So it was more the anatomy than it was the paper that I was buying. So many people want to buy a name, a color, and they don't see the important part. So
yeah, I've seen that, especially this year. I've had a lot of color come in, and a lot of sweet little horses, and they look like conformationally, they look like they were put together by a committee, and these people paid pretty good money for them too.
Sure,
you know, and a lot of feet, a lot of weird looking feet. And it's just kind of weird. And after about a month, you kind of have to, you know, you could tell them the first day too, I guess. Probably ought to do that in the future, but just say, hey, you know, this horse is never going to be much of anything. And it's weird too. The owners, they always say, yeah, well, I just like him. You know, I like his color. I like this. I like his name, you know, or there was a sale and I don't know why I bought him. It's pretty weird. You know, they all have a story, but the horses themselves, a lot of these 3 and 4 year olds that I've had in this year so far, a lot of them have had some real conformational issues. And it's kind of weird. You can tell they were bred for color, and they all have cool names on their papers and stuff and went for a bit of money. But it's like a cowboy wouldn't even want to ride fence on those things.
Yeah. I mean, that's the deal is we've got into that pedigrees, color, things of that. You know, that lineage helps, but if you don't have conformation, your likelihood of you getting a top end finish is slim to none. It can happen. You know, one of the greatest horses I ever shot in my career, he'd make you just want to go over and stick your head in the bucket and puke to look at him. But he achieved more than I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame. You know, he made the finals of all three majors in his aged event years. But there was nothing correct about him other than he had a great mind and was so trainable. But just to look at him, you think, my gosh, what kill cell did they get him out of? You know.
Yeah.
And
But that happens with everything.
Uh-huh.
I said that happens with everything, you know, like you go to look at the NBA and it's like absolute specimens. And then every now and then there's a Larry Bird or something who just walks into the room and is like, man, that's a gangly looking guy over there. I bet he can't do anything coordinated, you know, and then tears it up. So it's hard to outswim your gene pool, but it's not impossible.
It's not. You know, that's just like that horse I was talking about. I mean, it's no secret who he was. It's Smart Chickalina. When I was working for the Babcock Ranch, they come leading him down the hallway, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this horrible looking thing? I said, oh, that's Smart Chickalina. It's like, no way, guys. I said, yes, it is. And it was. And I didn't even expect to see a horse with that ill a conformation on that ranch. But he was the top. He was the number one guy there, you know. And he was for many years. But you never know where they're going to come from, you know.
Yeah. Well, and kind of what you were saying earlier, I could get on my soapbox and talk about this forever, but it kind of goes back to what we mentioned earlier, that the role of horses has shifted so much in the last 100 years, right?
Yes.
So then things like color and pedigree have become what's so important to a buyer, because it's, you know, it's like the horseshoers we were talking about. If I'm a breeder and I've, you know, I have an option of everything could be a roan and they could be kind of homely looking sons of guns, but they're roans.
Yeah.
Or I could have the most solid built bay horses of all time. If people aren't buying bays, it doesn't really matter if I've got the best bays, because there's people out there who, you know, all they want is the roans. Now, like you said, over time, if you can sell enough bays, you'll get the reputation of having really nice horses, because the horses will go on to be sound and have good careers.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of quick money in breeding for color or getting a bunch of colts out of one stud. Like, there's a lot of, you know, in the short term, you can get a lot of people to buy horses that way, but you might not, your reputation might be ruined in 5 years because all your horses go lame after they get trained for a futurity or whatever their fate might be, you know? So it seems like a principle in anything you do, that there are opportunities to go for that quick success, the quick money. I mean, it's like the Karate Kid. Have you ever seen that movie?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah. So it's, you know, it's like, oh, you can go to Cobra Kai and you can get a new colored belt every other week or something. Or you can sit there and just paint fence or whatever, you know, and just do that over and over and over again. And gosh, it's not going to be flashy, and man, there's not going to be a lot of gratification in the beginning. But you're going to be so much more solid further down the road than all those other people. And it's horseshoeing, horsemanship, breeding horses. You can take the shortcuts, but you're building a house of cards.
Yeah. And that's absolutely it, you know. And that's kind of, you just kind of explained my career. I stayed slow and steady, stayed to my fundamentals, my morals, and just steadily worked through. You know, I don't know how it all came about. All I wanted to do was shoe horses when I was a kid. I didn't care what their title was or what they had achieved or their color. I just wanted to shoe horses. But I learned from every horse I got to do. There was all another form of education for me. Whether they was a little kid's pony or a farmer's mule or a gaited horse or what, it didn't matter. All I wanted to do was get to shoe horses. And I wanted to use every one of them for a learning experience. And I gained all I could get from them. And then just kept putting it together and putting it together and putting it together. And a lot of it was just being able to recognize what was actually there. I knew I was still practicing to master the fundamentals. And I'm still practicing those same fundamentals to master those fundamentals. Every day, that's still the goal, is to shoot for it. But all those years was working at that, but also being able to recognize what I was looking at. What if I did this side of the foot? How does it affect the other side of the foot? For a lot of guys, girls, schools, you start up here, trim from the center of the toe to the heel, or you start at the heel and you trim all the way around. Okay. I've not ever done very many horses in my career that I could cut the same amount off at the toe as I cut off at the heel. That's not balancing a foot. Even the horses that I've shod their entire life, one time I'll do one process, the next time I'll do something else, because I'm always seeking that balance. You can't just trim the same off every time you trim a horse. And the ones that try that, eventually they will get off 1/1000th or 2/1000th of an inch. And in a very short period of time, it catches up with them and then they're in trouble. And the vets come in, the vets are getting to do more injections, costing our owners more money, or they get fired and they get replaced. And they really don't understand why, but that's what they were taught. You know, right here where I'm at today, there was 2 young adults that went to a horseshoeing institution, and they were struggling here. That's why I'm here at McGinnis Meadows now. They were really struggling, and we was worried about, this different situations and this and that. And I said, it's not these kids' fault. They're only doing what they were taught. And that's another big downfall in my industry, is the ones that are coming out today are being taught by students. All the old great masters has died. Reggie Custer, Bud Beeston, Doug Butler. All them guys are gone. They're not still teaching as strong today. Or if they are still at an institution, they've got assistants, instructors doing all the teaching. But most of them are student teachers. I was just at a horseshoeing school a few weeks ago. And if you graduated on Friday, Monday, if you want to start as a teacher, you can start as an instructor. Or the students that had been there 2 or 3 weeks, they were still students, but they was teaching the new ones coming in. That is a key to what happened to our industry.
Yeah. So
I hope my truck doesn't get blown up or something where I'm sitting now, or
yeah.
I don't get shot. But that's just the facts.
Yeah. Well, it happens. We don't need to go down this road, but you talk about education in America. When problems happen, when people stop investing in education, whatever industry it is, or if it's, educating the youth, anything like that, like when you, again, I'm sure for the school that's cutting corners, right? Because how much easier is it to bring in a 22-year-old that you've been teaching for 4 weeks than it is to find someone like you to come with all that experience and give kind of industry proven methods.
Mm-hmm. Well, they can't keep their schools open because they can only get so much tuition out of them, and they can only have so many students at a time. The institution can't afford the wages they'd have to pay for guys like myself to come off of the road, come out of our career to stay there and teach. We would have to be wanting to retire and stop doing what we're doing every day to be able to justify that, because they can only get so much tuition. And I mean, there's some that, there's some really, really great farriers out there in the world that's still working, teaching at universities and different deals. But it's a little different. It's not just a regular horseshoe school. Just like, you was talking about your friend, the guy that was on before me. He teaches up there at the college. But he's probably not getting paid $20,000 a year to teach there either. They're making it well worthwhile for him. And he's
I think it's definitely
still has his regular schedule. He doesn't have to be there 5 days a week teaching students. If it just came off the road and said, hey, I want you to go over here at so-and-so horseshoe, we want you to come over here and teach for us, he'd probably say, no way.
Yeah. So bring us home here, Tommy. What's the answer? If I give you a magic wand, if I give Tommy Kilgore a magic wand and you can wave it, and when you wave it, whatever you say goes, what's the way to fix the system? How do we fix the American farrier industry tomorrow with your magic wand?
The way to fix the farrier institution and the whole world is quit chasing the dollar. Start having a little more pride in what you're doing and produce quality, and the money will come. And that's the schools, they want to run them through. They want to run volume at a high cost for tuition. They don't care about quality. They want quantity. And this country, in my opinion, has lost that in a big way. When I was a young man growing up, around my hometown in my area, and I started off as a farrier, I worked for a man that had a beautiful ranch, amazing horses, and was financially very comfortable. In his career, he was a trash man. You guys still there?
Yep.
He had a trash service. Him and his wife ran the service to get it started, and they ran it and chased the trash truck themselves. But they wasn't ashamed of what they did. They was proud of doing a service for the communities and became a very wealthy man. How many young people today's world is going to go get them behind a trash truck and chase it down to try to make it and be proud of what they do?
Yeah, not many people. I think what you just said, that wrapped up some of the best advice, not just for the farrier industry, but for the whole country, and for any young guy or gal like us out there that have dreams of starting something on their own or working for a company. Maybe you're a company guy type of person, and you want to invest in where you're at. And that's not really being taught. Just open your phone and these guys jump out at you about how you can get on your laptop and in 10 minutes make 100 million and you can be like them. So we need more people like you out there that are spreading that and more examples, not just in the farrier world, but in everything.
It is. I mean, that's it. But in the farriers deal is, I don't, when they decided they want to be an elite farrier in the equine world, not in their own mind, they really want to prove themselves and successful. They'll quit. We all have to make a living. So don't get me wrong. Anyone that's going to be watching this, or you guys, don't get me wrong. We all have to make a living. But if we want to make a real living, when we start producing quality, things get good. When we're trying to just chase the dollar and roll a bunch of dollars and not really put no pride into our service, it only lasts so long. It catches up with you. So it doesn't matter what you're going to be doing or what you get into in the world. If you're not willing to go in 100% and be proud of what you're doing, don't waste everyone else's time. Don't cost other people a lot of money. And that's kind of a philosophy I've always lived by. Is, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to give 100% to do the best quality I can do. And I'll worry about the money later.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, need more guys like you, Tommy. I can get on board with that philosophy.
100%. Hey, before we go, I wanted to ask you something. What do you think about these glue-on or stick-on polymer shoes? The kind they print them in the 3D printers, or maybe you can buy them pre-made. I don't know much about it, but basically you're not nailing them and they're made out of plastic. That's what I know.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to say there's not a place for them, but I think they're overused. They're not used for what they were really truly designed for. And, you know, I don't have a problem with glue on shoes. I've glued on shoes myself. But I think I need a material that I can shape for what that horse needs. You know, some of those polymer shoes and things of that sort, you've got to pre-shape. You're just pretty much at the mercy. You know, some of them you can shape, some you can't. But back to what I started off with, sometimes we have to use an aid to get us through a spot. But if we start implementing our fundamentals correctly, the first time we see that patient, or however you want to classify it as, all of those problems will go away on their own, that you don't need glue on shoes. And that's what's happened to is, hey, those are cool. Those are neat. You know, I can charge $300 or $400, $500 to put a pair of them on. I would rather shoe that horse 3 or 4 times and make a progress every time. And in 5 or 6 shoeings, the problem's gone, and I never have to readdress it. It's just keep finding another Band-Aid. And
let me ask you it like this: Do you think that a lighter, more durable, no nail type of shoe is the future down the road, or are we still going to be nailing on steel shoes for the next 100 years or so?
Oh, I think they will try to continue to come up with things that is nail-on shoes. I mean, glue-ons, lighters. I mean, it just keeps coming and keeps coming. But on every Farrier's rig in the world, we're still nailing shoes on. Steel shoes, aluminum shoes. I don't think we'll ever be able to totally replace the traditional shoeing of steel shoes or aluminum shoes nailed on.
Well, I think nail-on shoes are kind of cool. Honestly, it's like just feels traditional. I don't know. I'm one of those guys that like stuff like a 3D printed machine, 3D printing machine on the back of a Farrier's truck, printing out plastic shoes would be kind of weird. Even though, you know, in 50 years we're probably going to experience some weird stuff, but it's kind of comforting to think of good old nails getting hammered into shoes. And it's just, I don't know. It's something right men have been doing it for thousands of years, or I don't know about thousands, but certainly the last 1,000, probably roughly 1,000 years they've been doing it. So why stop now?
Well, there's all kinds. They've came up with all kinds of things to try to, you know, eliminate the steel shoe and the nails. And it's just, like I said, they have their place. The glue-ons, that's polymer shoes, all that different type of stuff. But it still goes back to the same thing. It doesn't matter what kind of shoe you put on. If your trim's not proper, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a keg shoe or a handmade shoe, what it is. It goes back to the trim being correct, and then the shoe shape, shape being correct for the balance. And we've got away from that. And I know I keep going back to the same old thing every time, all about everything, but it's just the facts. That's just like for myself. I had to learn what type of shoes I could wear, what exercises I need to do to keep my body with some balance where I can shoe horses this many years. Because most shooters never see a career a third of the longest I've been shoeing, and I have no intents of quitting anytime soon. You know, I'd like to make some moves to where I could have that option if I wanted to, but it's just actually hanging it up and quitting. I'm still physically strong and still shoe every day. But I had to do the same for myself as I try to accomplish with my trainers and my owners and with my job to last the longevity of their horse. I've got a little example. In 2002, I had a client call me to come up into Kansas, and they were injecting every horse in the barn from 45 to 60 days. That's how bad a problem they had. And the owners, it's like, nope, we're not paying him that extra $35 a head over what their guy was charging. So we had a little meeting with them, and I just put to them plain and said, guys, if I did nothing more than one time a year, saved you one injection, one time a year, didn't I just pay my own wages? And they would, because the rates of injections, so stifles, hocks, and fetlocks. And they was like, well, I guess you're probably right. All of those people that are still alive or still training, I still shoot for. But they weren't going to pay me the $35 a head extra back there in 2002 because I charged more. But they, as I started working for them, they realized how much I saved them. And it was all just pure basics. And a lot of them's questioned that over the years. How did you come in there and didn't do anything that them other guys was doing, and all of our problems started going away? I didn't make them all go away, but I improved the situation. I did what I was taught. Fundamentals and balanced the horse from his foot all the way up. And
wow. Yeah, not only did you save money, but I'm sure their horses were operating a hell of a lot better because of that as well. So they had, they were making up for it on that end too.
And there's some of those horses that I started on up there in 2002 that are way in their 20s now, on up into their 20s. They're still being used. I go through up there every 6 weeks and shoe for 4 days. And some of them old horses are still just trudging right along and doing fine. Got good, nice feet, good thick hoof walls all the way. The perimeters around's good. Their heel balance is good. I don't think there's not a one of them up there that we have any major splints or tendon issues or navicular issues or anything. And they were basically all performance horses and showed all the way through their aged events and then the weekend shows until way on up there. Some of them 10, 12 years old, they're still showing them. And then they just got taken to the farm and get joyride on now. But there was good care by the owners, good care by the trainers, but we kept a good foundation under those horses through all the hardest years of their life, so they're still going today. I think I'm going to steal a little credit there. That good foundation we put under them, I think, has contributed to them horses still being going today.
Yeah, as you should absolutely. Too, because I feel like everyone who's been around horses, they've heard the saying, "No hoof, no horse," right? So farriers, if a horse has accomplished a lot and he's had one farrier his whole life, that speaks volumes to the farrier, I think. So
yeah. All righty. Well, Joe, unless you had anything else right now, let's wrap this thing up here soon. Tommy, you might still need to eat dinner or something. I don't know. But where can folks find you if they want to look you up and learn more about you?
Oh, we have a Facebook, which is under Tommy Kilgore. That's it. I don't have a website. I don't advertise. I haven't advertised in over 20 years. It's all word of mouth and then things like this. And thank you guys for having me on. I don't give out my personal phone number because my phone rings all the time. Anyway, but they can contact me through Messenger on Facebook. It's just under Tommy Kilgore, and I would try to help anyone as much as I could. on a purchase of a horse, helping them with their anatomy or evaluations. I do a lot of that. I locate a lot of horses, and I help people that's located their own horses and help them kind of protect themselves. So it's not only just teaching about shoeing, and I do try to reach out and help others, keep them from getting themselves in a bind and buying one of those horses that's sure pretty in color, but he's, not built very good, because it's going to cost them a long way, in training, cost them in vet bills. The horse might have a short career, if a career at all. So I just try to reach out to others that way. But that's about the only way that they can get direct contact with me is through that. Because, like I said, my phone rings off the wall.
Yeah, you don't want to give that out.
No. Yeah, we
You'll
totally
get a bunch of guys in India. A bunch of guys in India will be giving you a call asking about horses. So, you don't need to talk to them. Well, cool. So you guys know where to go if you want to find Tommy. And thank you very much for spending time with us. It's been extremely educational.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back sometime. We appreciate it, man.
Be happy to do that.
That'd be fun.
Have a good night, guys.
All righty. Well.